I'll tell you what happened while we watch the scenery go by, and then I'll tell you what we're looking at. So you saw some film with Stefano on board. We arrived in Ketchikan, checked through customs, and then left to circumnavigate the village of Guido Island, mainly to see the Misty Fjords National Monument. We had some mixed weather, saw the fjords, which were pretty nice, sort of like a miniature Yosemite. The second last day up there, we were in a body of water called the Dean Canal. We had a fairly strong wind behind us, and we had a fantastic sail of about 35 miles downwind with big waves. After some nice anchorages, we arrived back in Ketchikan Friday morning at about 11 o'clock. Stefano was to go out on Saturday. And just as we pulled in, Dirk and Saskia arrived from Holland, so we connected up easily at the marina. Stefano left, and Dirk, Saskia, and I were going to leave, but a big storm came in, and it blew about 35 and 40 knot winds right in the harbor. So we stayed for one day in Ketchikan, walking around in really very thick rain. But all three of us bought sort of traditional fisherman type hats, so we just let the rain wash off us and we walked around. After the storm, we left, and yesterday went up Ernest Sound, stayed in a nice anchorage in Santa Ana Channel. On the way, I fished for about 15 minutes and caught a 5-pound salmon, which was our dinner last night, and I traded about half of it for 4 crabs, which are sitting in the cockpit waiting to be our dinner tonight. We're on our way to Wrangell. These are the Zimoviev Channel. We've gone up some narrows that were kind of interesting. Right now, there was some question about where we were with respect to a rock, and we've just taken a fix. And we hope we know where we are, and we hope we'll miss the rock. So everything's going just fine. I'll show you Dirk and Saskia in a minute. The cruise is real interesting. It's interesting for the scenery. It's interesting for the weather. The weather is very, very changeable. It's 80% not so nice weather and 20% very nice weather, but the bad weather just makes you appreciate the nice weather all the more. This very flat water that you're seeing is not at all typical of what we've had in the trip. It's a real pleasure to be motoring in something this non-threatening. When we woke up this morning, it was raining, but as you can see, although it's not clear now, at least it's been dry all day. There's some high snow-capped mountains off in the distance. We hope in a few days to be far enough north to start seeing some whales. So that's Dirk and Saskia back there. They've got this real nice foul weather gear from Holland, which is insulated with pile as well as being waterproof. So that's Saskia, and that's Dirk. I think that's Dirk, or maybe this is Saskia, and that's Dirk. Well, I guess that's Dirk. Okay, we're looking here at our dinner tonight that I swapped half the salmon for. This is Bob and Ted, Alice and Marie. Dirk, why don't you pick one up for us? See how he smiles?
See how Dick gets afraid?
Wait a minute, hold him there. Hold him still. It takes some time for the camera to focus. There we go. Friendly little critters. Well, we've got 4 of them. We got this off my friends on the boat Restless, the people who always tell us all the things that are impossible. So I hope they'll be our dinner tonight. Okay, well, it's later on June 22nd, and we're going to have a picture here of Dirk executing his first animal. I don't know, maybe he's killed a lot of things. So go ahead, Dirk. Dirk's been waiting for this all day. He's been talking with the crab and discussing it.
I can't see anything because my glasses.
Just drop him on his back and put the top on fast.
Yeah, I can feel it moving.
Yeah?
Yeah. course not. I have to put the lid in real tight.
Is he fighting?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He's as dead as
I think he was already
Oh,
dead.
yeah. No, they're dead in a second. So that's the end of Mr. Crab. Maybe we'll show you a picture
Wait a second.
of when we eat him.
Je gooit
Oh,
net zoals
don't open it, Dirk, because it
No,
cools
no,
off
no.
in there. What are you going to do? Oh, you don't have to do that. Keep it on the fire. There you go.
Okay.
Okay, well here we are 10 minutes later, folks. We're sitting in the cockpit in Wrangell, and you can see the result of boiling Mr. Crab for about 8 minutes with just a little bit of vinegar in the water. And
And it's very good.
yeah?
Yeah.
Best crab you ever had, huh?
Yeah.
Except for the cocktails.
Except for the cocktails.
We krijgen er niet veel uit.
So this is how most good surgeons receive their first training.
I like surgery.
Kan ik dit nou helemaal eten? Het rode ook. Is er geen bloed? Nee? Nee? Nee, dat is wel.
Oh, that's good. Speak Dutch and people will think this is a foreign film. Okay, today's June 23rd. Oh hum, more scenery. We woke up today in Wrangell after eating all that crab last night. We had a beautiful blue sky. I think it's about the first day in Alaska, or even in the last 2 weeks, that it was blue from horizon to horizon. So we're on our way to Petersburg, and we're going up Wrangell Narrows. This is a real nice piece of real estate. Naturally, it looks even nicer in the sunshine. Off in the distance, you see your standard Alaskan snow-capped mountains. This is a real narrow channel that goes on for about 21 miles, and it's fortunately got lots of buoys, so you can go from mark to mark to mark, and that's what we're doing. We're just following along on the chart. Here's the shoreline. As we go by, we're trying to keep our eyes open for grizzly bears. We didn't even know it, but the harbor we were in 2 nights ago was just about 5 miles from a bear reserve and observatory. If I had known that, I would have gone over, so maybe I'll catch that on the trip back. There's the crew back there, following the things along. Now that it's a sunny day, everybody's feeling real good. Things have dried out. Dirk was feeling a little frustrated because we weren't sailing. We were just motoring, but I pointed out to him if he wanted to get to Petersburg, which he does, we wouldn't get there by 8 o'clock if we were tacking into the wind. Now that the wind has shifted aft a little bit, and we sailed for a little while, but in this channel it got kind of fluky. You can hear the sound of the Yanmar putting along back there. I'm standing up on the bow. There's a roller furling jib. I had a nice long conversation with Suzanne last night. We talked about how hard it was for me to get along with everybody, but that's life. She made the good observation that the nice thing about cruising with your family is that when something gets on your nerves, you can tell them immediately, and so sentiments don't build up. But when they're strangers, you can't really do that. So we'll just keep going along, and if I see anything I think is interesting, I'll pop out the video camera again. I thought those mountains were kind of beautiful. They're very far away. When you look at them in the binoculars, they look really humongous, and like there's an awful lot of snow up there. I think they're about 9,000 feet high, and that there's a glacier called the Conch Glacier that's fed by that snow field. Well, bye for now. June 20th. Well, we're just coming out of Wrangell Narrows on the way to Petersburg, and here's a good example of a floating log camp. There's active logging going on, and there's a log boom being made up there in the water. Take a minute for this guy to focus as usual. The logs are dragged down out of the mountain and put in the water, and logs are pulled around it in the form of a rectangle to entrap them. The interesting thing is the loggers are living in these house trailers that are on barges. So the whole camp is floated to a scene where the equipment is brought. They live here, clear the trees out, sell them, get them sent to market, and then a tug will come and pull that little floating village to another area. I guess this used to be even more common years ago. I've only seen a couple of these along the way. It looks just like sort of a barge with house trailers on it, filled with loggers. There's your proverbial logging road going up to the mountain. As we go along here, we've seen a lot of patches of clear cut, but they've been reseeded in a rather nice way, unlike the clear cuts that we saw in Canada, which we just left a mess. As you can see, or maybe you can see it, the land seems to be covered with very small conifers that are growing back in. I guess this whole area is part of the Tongass National Forest, the biggest national forest in the United States. It's basically 90% of southeast Alaska. So I guess nowadays when they sell the lumber rights for clear cutting, the loggers have to go back and plant it. All along these Wrangell Narrows, we've been seeing cabins, fishing lodges, things like that. We even saw a couple of signs saying land for sale. I think the land's pretty expensive, about $25,000 for a couple of acres along the water. And maybe it's a great place, but I don't know how bad the mosquitoes would be up here. That looks like a clear-cut site that hasn't been replanted yet. We're just looking up the Wrangell Narrows here. Petersburg is about 6 or 8 miles away. We should be there in about an hour and a half. This has been, I think, just about the first day in 3 weeks when it's been clear all day long, and it's just been a pleasure. You certainly quickly forget about the miserable weather once you have a day or two like this, even one day, even a half a day. Unfortunately, clear weather brings winds out of the northwest, light winds, sort of up to 15 knots, which is right on our nose. If you really want to sail, you need southerly winds, and they come in bad weather, and that means rain. So the sailing takes place when it's raining, and the motoring takes place when it's clear. That's okay. More scenery. I'm getting to know the different kinds of fishing boats. This is a trolling boat that would put out outriggers and put hundreds of hooks on. There's basically 4 kinds. There's the outrigger kind of fishing boat that trails lines with hooks. I think they can probably fish almost every day. Then there's the gill netters that put out a net about 1,000 feet long. They're allowed to fish just for 2 days out of each week, and sometimes not even that. Then there are the purse seiners that put out a big circular net about 100 meters across. They're only allowed to fish 1 day out of the week, and sometimes not even that. So I guess if you're a fisherman, you spend a lot of time sitting around waiting. I should take at least one picture of our faithful Avon, which is towing along after us. I've gone just about 1,000 miles now, a few miles under that, and this little guy's been following us the whole time. There were little tiny barnacles growing on the back, but I cleaned them off. It's starting to unravel just a tad on the bottom. So far, so good. I'm carrying it sort of just nudged up against the stern of Dancer. It kind of bumps Dancer with its nose on the tush of Dancer. That's the way Stefano set it up. It seems to trail better that way than behind me with a triple bridle. You see some of us can relax. That's Saskia taking in the sun, reading a book in Dutch. She's got a bag of marshmallows. How's the trip so far?
Great. It is. Beautiful.
Where's your marshmallows? Oh, there they are. There they are. I told
I know you like them.
No thanks. I told Saskia I don't eat marshmallows, but I've eaten about half the bag, so I hope she'll keep them away from me. So there's the rest of the crew down inside the cabin, getting out of the weather. Dirk's reading the book on Southeast Alaska, so we can find out what to do when we get to Petersburg. We're going to look into maybe taking some kind of a ferry over to the LeConte Glacier, but they seem to be pretty expensive around here, about $125 a day per person. So I may not do that since I've been seeing a lot of glaciers to the north. See how Vance is packed up at the bow. Stuff all the sleeping bags up there during the day, and we're going to drag them out at night. Well, we've just come to the end of Wrangell Narrows, and here's Petersburg sitting here before us with a beautiful backdrop of snow-capped mountains. It's really a very beautiful place to put a city. I don't know how far away the mountains are, but they sure are pretty big. I think they're about 9,000 feet. And they feed a couple of glaciers that are about 30 miles from here. We're going to probably find the harbor somewhere right in there. I just called the harbor master on Channel 16 and he told us where to go. So how do you like that for a view from your front window? One big mountain kind of giving the world a finger. It's probably called Finger Mountain. International sign of greeting. Dirk just announced he wants to go out to dinner tonight. Guess that means he doesn't like my cooking, but I hope he remembers that he agreed to pay for all my meals out. He seems to forget that when the check comes, but I don't take it, so he pays it. Petersburg, Alaska. This is supposed to be a very nice town with a strong Norwegian heritage. Once a year they have a Norway Festival, the third week in May. It's supposed to be more prosperous than most of the other Southeast Alaska communities. They have a good fishing fleet and good lumbering. That's probably the harbor over there. So in another 30 minutes, we'll be in and visit Petersburg. Don't you wish you all were here? Those are probably the outriggers of the fishing boats you can see just over there. There's a very strange kind of wildlife here in Canada. We don't know if it's a sea otter or what, but these guys just came swimming by. They're in survival suits, which are a requirement on commercial fishing boats in Alaska. And this must be some kind of training exercise. We were just eating dinner here in the harbor at Petersburg when we saw these three orange objects going by, two of which you see there. How's the water? Is that pretty comfortable?
Yeah, it feels like nothing.
How long did it take you to get into that?
It's my first time.
How long?
It takes a long time. It's my first time.
Uh-huh. Well, it's the morning of June 25th, and we're leaving Petersburg now. I thought I'd record again the pretty mountain landscape. Off in the distance, there's this very singular mountain. Maybe I showed it when we came in here. I think it's called Devil's Stamp, just sort of sticking up above the other peaks over and back of them. We're going to head north and eat lunch in what's supposed to be a rather pretty bay where you can see a glacier. And then we're going to head about another 10 or 15 miles northwest to a deep anchorage that my acquaintances on the vessel Restless had recommended as a good spot. Our plan is to go for about 3 days to the Tlingit Indian village of Angoon, where we're going to leave Dancer for 2 days and take the ferry over to Sitka. So we'll see how all that goes. I'll just shoot now going back into Petersburg. Petersburg was really, I think, the prettiest place that we had been in. As you see, we're going out with some of the fishing fleet. It's a relatively prosperous community relative to places like Rangoon. I'm sorry, relative to places like Wrangell. We've been corrected, I've been told. You don't call it Wrangell. My friends on the Restless said, that's what yuppies in San Francisco would call it. That up here in the north, we pronounce everything real simply. It's Wrangell. So if you're from the city and you come up here, don't make the big mistake of calling it Wrangell. That's a little too fancy. There's a big glacier near here with the name LeConte, and the guys cautioned us against calling it LeConte. So just LeConte. We're simple people up here. This is our third beautiful day in a row, and the weather forecasts a couple of more of these, so we're in good luck. While we're going along here, I'll just point out this is a characteristic troller boat. Those are outriggers up above the boat. They go out to the side and string a long line out from each side in which there can be many hundreds of hooks, either with bait or artificial lures. The boats that you see up here are either the trollers like that, or the gill netters, which put out a long straight net, or the purse seiners that put out a circular net. You also see crab boats and shrimp boats. By about this time, we're getting to know pretty well what's what out here. The purse seiners are really humongous things. I would hate to be sandwiched between two of those at a float when a wake came by. That's the only nightmare ahead of this trip, being sandwiched between two big boats and a wave coming in and Dancer getting crushed like an eggshell. We're now 3 hours out of Petersburg. We had kind of an exciting upwind sail here. It just came into Thomas Bay, which is a very scenic place. And just as we got in, the dinghy rubbed against the anchor and got a big cut in it. Coming into Thomas Bay, you can see this glacier coming into it. This is the first bay I've been in that had a glacier. According to the chart, it doesn't really come right down to the water, but it sure looks to me like it does. I'll just pan around the bay here. It's a beautiful bay with 4,000 plus foot mountains coming down to it. There's a couple of good places to tie up. A state mooring buoy and a log boom up around this point over here. We're going to go on the east side of a little island called Mary Island. Mainly we're going to tie up and try and repair the dinghy. The cut looks to be about 1 or 2 centimeters long, so I should be able to fix it, unless there's something else on here. You can hear the flow of the water as we sail along. The wind in here is about a gentle 10-knot breeze off the port quarter. We're just trucking along at about 5 or 6 knots. Well, this is what we came for, I guess. Blue skies, beautiful scenery, nice sailing, punctured dinghy. Did I say that? Well, anyhow, see what the next chapter is going to be. Well, this is the very end of something called Scenery Cove. It's up in Thomas's Bay, about 10 miles from Petersburg, where we were headed this morning. Just before we entered Thomas's Bay, we had a little bit of a disaster. We were sailing rather fast, and the dinghy was pulled up near the stern, and a wave pushed the dinghy against the anchor and punctured a hole in it about 2 centimeters long. So we pulled into a place east of Mary Island and tied up and patched it. I hope it'll be good. This is just a beautiful little cove. I'm going to pan around here. It's only about, see, about 150 yards wide, and it leads out into the main bay where the glacier is. I'll take another picture of that when we come out. There's the dinghy resting up on the front deck. I've got to let it dry about 12 hours, and then we'll blow it up and see what happens. You can hear the little Yanmar putt-putting along. That's the sound when we're at about 2 knots. Just really wonderful scenery in this place. Quite a few one cliff with spruce trees on it. Spruce trees on it. Maybe you've seen them all. Today's June 26th. We left Portage Cove this morning a little after 9 o'clock after putting together the dinghy. The repair I made seems to work just fine. We've gone now about 45 miles and are just at the end of Frederick Sound, beginning to cross Chatham Straits. Off in the distance is Baranof Island. I'll just pan across. It's really your picturesque Alaskan landscape. Although we started out the morning with about 15 knots of wind and some choppy seas, after about 2 hours they stopped and we've had these beautiful motoring conditions all along. We plan to go about 55 miles today, ending up at Warm Springs Bay. After spending part of the day there tomorrow, we'll go on to the Indian village of Bangoon, where we hope to leave the boat for 2 days while we take the ferry to Sitka. So that's Baranof Island off in the distance. Baranof Island, I think, covers the whole west edge of Chatham Straits, and the west side of Baranof Island is the city of Sitka. So much for scenery. Today is June 27th. We arrived in this very pretty bay called Warm Springs Bay, hoping to find some hot springs here. Well, as you can see, there are houses in what seems to be an Indian village, but it's totally abandoned. There are brand new cabins on the shore that evidently were for some kind of a resort situation. This building over here, up to last year, was a general store and a bathhouse. Well, the store has been sort of, well, not gutted, but it looks like some vandals went through it and dumped over whatever goods were there. There are no people in it. The hot springs are closed. We walked up a trail on this wooden boardwalk that went up to Baranof Lake, which was a pretty lake. We found the source of the hot springs along the way, but it didn't look like something you could sit down in and take a bath. I guess up to last year, there was a pipe that brought the hot water down into the bathhouse, and you could take your hot bath there. Last night I had a real nice conversation with some fishermen who were tied up there. There was about 6 or 7 purse seiners that have come in here because tomorrow is the first purse seine opener of the season. An opener is a day when they're allowed to fish. You're only allowed to fish, well, not many days of the year. This is a purse seiner, kind of an old-fashioned one. I spent about an hour and a half on board the boat that was built by the fisherman's grandfather in the 1920s. He said this is the 63rd season that it's gone out. That's an example of a purse seiner. You can see the net piled up on the back, and their motorized tender in the back, and that heavy winch up above the boat in the back. The purse seiner, one end of it is tied to the boat, and the tender takes the other end out in a big circle, draws it around back to the boat, and then after a little bit, they close the bottom of it and haul it up with the winch. Our plan is to leave here in a few minutes and catch the tide, going to the Indian village of Bangoon, where we hope to leave the boat for 2 days while we go to Sitka. Several people we've talked to have warned us about leaving the boat in Bangoon. They said, well, we've heard bad stories about vandalism and thievery. But I don't have any real choice if I'm going to do the Sitka thing, so I thought I'll just take a chance and see what happens. Here's a shot of Dancer sitting at the dock here in Warm Springs. She still seems to be in just as good a shape as when it left Berkeley. The only thing that hasn't been working very well is the wind direction indicator. It seems to have been damaged somehow in transit on the truck, and since it's up at the top of the mast, there's not a whole lot I can do to fix it just now. But the boat's clean, it's working well. As I told you yesterday, the dinghy's all patched, so we're ready to go. There's one half of our Dutch crew coming down the walkway. Dirk just went up, I think, to take some pictures.
Morning. We should leave.
So anyhow, that's the Warm Springs store. Maybe next time we come back, it'll be... Well, we've just come upon a pod of whales. There he is. It seems to be a family of killer whales. We're about 45 minutes out of Warm Springs Bay. All day yesterday we were seeing whales, but not so close up. They're about 200 yards away, and we can't get any closer. Yesterday, all the whales we saw, I think, were humpbacks because they didn't have dorsal fins. These have dorsal fins, and when they come way out of the water, a white underbelly. Seems to be a mother and two calves and maybe a male. Basic nuclear family. Tugboats off in the distance, pulling big log booms. Fantastic. Wow! Wow! All right, so let's see, we've done the eagle thing. We did the salmon thing, we did the crab thing, we did the whale thing. Now we see, let's see, grizzly bear, glacier, and I can go home. A little more whale shot here. I am the first member of the Packard clan from Avanti, Lithuania, to come to Alaska to see orcas. Not bad scenery to be seeing them in. That's Baranof Island in the background. How far? Where I'm... Which way? Oops. There we go. There they are. I hope this isn't shaking too much on the screen. We've got about a 8-knot headwind, and I'm sitting on the cabin top with the motor chugging along at about 3 knots. Well, it's now later in the day after seeing the killer whales, and we're in the little Indian village of Angoon on the east side of Chatham Straits. We had a great passage here. About an hour before I got here, I caught about a 5-pound salmon, which we just ate for dinner. I have my camera out to show you a really scenic view. There's 4 or 5 of these beautiful old fishing boats laying on their side in the shallows, just decaying away. I thought an artist could make a really nice picture out of these. I just saw something unusual. I went to the top of the dock and called Rose, and while I was on the phone, 2 young Indian guys dragged 2 seals out of their rowboat that they had shot and eviscerated and dragged them with all their weight, drag them up the gangway and into their cars. I guess the Indians are permitted to shoot seals for food. First I felt bad for the seals, but then I thought probably the killer whales we saw this morning would eat them for lunch some other time. Angoon is sort of a typical little Indian village, very quiet. Nobody's got much money. The houses are kind of helter-skelter around the place. Dancer's the only pleasure boat here, or certainly the only sailboat. Today I had a great feeling. I pulled up to get some fuel here in Angoon after coming in the harbor, which the pilot guide and Charlie's chart says you shouldn't enter it except at slack water and only with knowledge, with local knowledge. Strangers shouldn't come in here. So I stopped out on Chatham Straits and talked to a few of the locals and got the local knowledge, and we came in here safely. Anyhow, the boat was tied up at this fuel dock, and I had to go to the top of the gangway. And when I looked down at the boat, little green Dancer and with all these work boats and this beautiful scenery, I thought, I did that. I did that. Just me. I did that. And it was just a real nice feeling. Anyhow, there's the gracious old fishing boats. Probably never to go out again. Maybe that one's got a chance. Who knows? Well, tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock we're going to take the ferry to Sitka, so in a couple of days maybe I'll report how that all went. Well, folks, today's July 3rd. What you see before you, although not very impressive, is the destination of this whole trip. That's the mouth of Glacier Bay. We spent the last day in the Indian village of Hoona. It was a very nice place. It was a real good harbor. I thought about heading for Glacier Bay yesterday, but the waves were too big and uncomfortable, so we took it. Right now, the seas are flat, and there's an enormous current running. You can see a big swirl here in the water. There's another one. That's one of many big tidal rips. The boat's traveling through the water at about 5.9 knots. The Loran's reading about 1.1. We had a nice passage this morning out of Hoona. We passed a place called Point Adolphus, which one or two people told Dirk was just filled with whales. And so he had his sights set on seeing 30 whales breaching all the time, and all we saw was 2 or 3 spouts. I had told him yesterday that people tend to exaggerate tourist sites, and if you take literally what they say, you're just going to be disappointed. And I think he was disappointed. He was muttering, "They lied to us, they lied to us." Well, they didn't lie, they just weren't very precise. It would have been a lot better if someone had said, on your way past Point Adolphus, you might see a whale or two, keep your eyes open. And if there were 30, we would have had a great time. Anyhow, we're going to buck these tidal rips. The tide is changing right now. It'll become a flood tide, and it'll just blow us right into part of the cove. And Dirk and Saskia will leave the boat, and I should come in and bed tomorrow, and we'll go and explore Glacier Bay. Everything's been going just fine so far. The boat's in great shape. We've been able to handle any small repairs that were needed. The weather for the last 9 days has been totally blue from horizon to horizon, and no rain. I wish it would last this way for the next 3 weeks, but this is Alaska. Right now the wind chill factor, by the way, I would say is down around 40 or 45 degrees. I'm wearing Juan's Patagonia hat, a jacket, a sweater, a wool shirt, and my Musto all-weather gear, and my hands are still cold. Well, this scenery's nothing special, so we'll stop till later. This is Richard of the North, out. Well, movie fans, today is July 5th, and if you've ever seen pictures of Glacier Bay with absolutely flat water, you'll know that this is Glacier Bay National Park. I got to Bartlett Cove at Glacier Bay about a day and a half ago, and Dirk and Saskia left the boat, I spent yesterday at anchor, and unfortunately it got real rolly and choppy in there, and I got kind of seasick. I came to shore at about 5:30 and found Suzanne and Benjamin, who are now on board. So there's my new crew. Real nice to have them with me. And they came up with 2 packages of home-baked chocolate chip cookies that Mom made for me, which was real nice. Thought she really must miss me. Anyhow, we've just been motoring for about an hour and a half against the tide, and the tide has just turned, so we hope to go chugging up into Blue Mouse Cove, possibly up into Reed Glacier today. We'll spend a couple of days looking at the glaciers, and then we'll head back to Juneau, actually stopping probably at, oh, I forgot the name of the bay. We'll end up at Auk Bay, which is just a few miles from Juneau. We saw a few whales this morning, but they were very far off, so we just saw their plume and their tails, and we're hopeful that we'll see more whales. Okay, well that's Glacier Bay National Park. Ben's downstairs sleeping. He's really reading really well. He was reading us from his Batman 2 book this morning, and he's very enthusiastic about it. Like I said, it's a real pleasure to have him with me. I'm sorry that I have to keep telling him all my rules, because that probably makes me seem real uptight, but all those rules have worked so far. Boat's not messed up, nothing's broken, and nobody's been hurt, so I guess I'll just keep doing the same thing that worked. Well, we'll come back later when we see something more interesting. Well, it's now about 5 hours later on July 5th. We're still cruising up Glacier Bay towards the west arm. The scenery is very interesting here because the glacier just receded about 150 years ago. So instead of seeing mountains with trees everywhere, the mountains are quite bare and are just beginning to form soil. Down near the bottom of the mountains, where there is soil, there's small shrubs called alder and the beginning of some trees. And then as you go up, it gets quite barren. So in a sense, as you go up this valley, you're kind of going back in time in terms of an ice age. It's rather a unique kind of thing. It's sort of like the big telescope looking back to earlier and earlier eras in time. You can just drive up here until you get right to the edge of the glacier, where of course no vegetation will have started. All the rest of southeast Alaska was very heavily forested as I traveled through it. You can see we're surrounded by snow-capped mountains. There's low cloud cover, so we're not normally seeing the tops of them. They're fairly high. They go up about 3,500 to 4,000 feet right up from the water. If you look off in the distance there, it kind of looks like your image of cold, cold Alaska. Ben's been sleeping all afternoon. Hope there's nothing wrong with him. Suzanne's down in the galley making up some pasta with pesto that we're going to have for lunch, even though it's almost 4 o'clock. Kind of a late lunch. Just around that point of land is Blue Mouse Cove, which is where we might spend the night, or we might go a couple more hours inland up and stay in Reed Inlet near the Reed Glacier. Well, that's what Glacier Bay looks like from this point of view. This is still later on July 5th. We're on our way to Reed Inlet, and we just rounded a corner in this really nifty view into view. That must be a glacier up there, a non-tidal glacier. Tidal glaciers are the ones that go into the sea. Alaska is the only place in North America that has tidal glaciers. Maybe the only other place is Russia, or maybe the tip of South America. That's a really nifty view. as I motor along here, I keep wondering, what the hell am I doing here? It's cold, it's a wilderness, I got 2 children along. What happens if something goes wrong? It makes me a little nervous. I hope nothing does go wrong. You can hear the motor in the background. We've been motoring all day. The wind just sprung up behind us about 11 knots. So I've got the jib out. I could be sailing, except we have the rain awning up just in case. And I'm pretty tired. I'm not going to do it. Really, what you see in there? A land that time forgot. I would not want to be stuck up there, folks. This will just complete the panorama around on the other side of the boat. Kind of a gray day. Probably the ice left this area no more than about 50 years ago. So there's very little topsoil, no trees, just a little bit of ground brush beginning. Ben and Ben being really impressed with what they've seen. Ben's got his ankle camera, he's having a great all time. Shooting away at pictures. A little hot and pepper. When I met them at the lodge yesterday, they saw me for the first time with my so-called beard, and they were really disgusted. Especially Ben, he was kissing me and said, "Yeah, beard, shave it off, yeah, yeah." Susanna's sweet enough not to say anything too terrible, but she said I would look a lot better without it. I kind of agree. I went to a barber in Sitka for a haircut and got my beard trimmed for the very first time, and I asked the barber, "Do you think this will ever turn into a real beard?" He said, "I don't think so." We're in Blue Mouse Cove. We never made it to Reed Inlet. We're spending the night here. Since it's July 5th, the kids are having their 4th of July stuff.
Okay, should we light them together? Let's take 2.
Nice mountains in the background.
Well, we can start them together.
No, I think they're both green.
Can you light them? Can you light them? It's not on.
Yep. Whoa.
Take it.
Look this way, Sue.
Then don't put it over the boat. They're smart.
Sue, you want to tell about your trip so far?
We got here yesterday, and today we saw whales and dolphins and seals and glaciers. Yesterday we saw some eagles.
We saw our first icebergs, right?
Yep, we saw our first icebergs. I said icebergs. Oh, didn't.
I'm gonna do mine. No, let me just let me see if it works. I know it won't. Not yet.
Nice place, this.
I tried lighting it in the middle, but
Having a little trouble with my outboard motor.
Okay.
Doesn't seem to, it runs for about a minute and then dies. So I think maybe the carburetor float is stuck. I'm going to take it apart tonight and see if I could fix it. Over there's another boat in Marina, some friends we made on a boat called Morning Fog. It's, let's see, Nancy and Irwin, I think, from Tacoma. They've just retired and they're going to leave their, they're going to live on their boat this winter in Hoona, the Indian town of about population 800. There's a great deal there. The marina, they can leave it for the winter. About $200. Something very big just jumped over there, kids.
I know. What do you think it is?
Probably a salmon. Do you know what it was?
I have no idea. I didn't even see it.
Probably.
Well, today's July 6th in Glacier Bay. We just left Blue Mouse Cove on our way to the Johns Hopkins Inlet. We came upon this place where we thought there was one waterfall, and instead there's a whole bunch of them, all cascading down. The water is a real strange-looking blue. It looks kind of like the chlorine in a swimming pool. So Ben and Suzanne pulled out their cameras, and I thought I ought to pull out my camera. Suzanne pointed out that nobody has ever lived here because only 200 years ago this was all under ice. In fact, this was probably under ice 100 years ago, even when Grandpa Jack was born.
There's way up front and in the middle. Yeah, down. There's one. No, see.
So the government didn't have to throw anybody out of here to make it a national park, although they did in other parts of the glacier.
See, there's and that one goes down. The trees blocked it.
Well, we'll get going and see what we find further on. What's this? Off in the distance, it seems to be a giant crocodile sitting on the water. Maybe it was frozen in one of the ice in one of the glaciers and broke off in the light. It looks like a big crocodile. When we get closer, we'll have to see what it is.
You want me to tell now?
Yeah, tell what you're wearing.
This is all the clothes I have on. 2 pairs of socks, 1 pair of boots, long underwear, polypropylene long underwear, jeans, regular underwear, undershirt, silk long underwear, turtleneck, sweatshirt, fleece jacket, then this jacket, 2 pairs of gloves, 2 hats, and a hood.
Are you warm?
Yes.
Well, now that we can come closer, you see, it's not a crocodile, it's a giant frog. Actually, it's what's called a birdie bit. It's a little iceberg. Actually, not so little. It's a good deal bigger than Dancer. Suzanne said since it's dark-colored, maybe it's a snurtberg, snurt being a combination of snow and dirt. When you see these icebergs, you want to go over and fool around with them. You know, touch them and push them and bump them. But you got to remember that you're only seeing 1/10, maybe even less than 1/10. There's an enormous chunk of ice underwater. Very, very dense ice that could just tear the boat to ribbons. So we come close, but not too close. Some of the shapes you see are very, very strange. As we get in towards the glaciers, we'll probably see more. Well, now we're closer, and what looked like a giant alligator and then a giant frog turned out to be a really weird sculpted
I
iceberg.
think it's made out of stone. And
Wow,
Dad
well,
thinks
look.
it's made out of an iceberg.
I think it's a snurtberg.
Let's go over a little closer.
Yeah, it's ice.
No, it's not.
With the seagull sitting on it.
So it's a rock. Why would a seagull sit on
It's really sculpted. There's another smaller one.
I still think it looks like it's wood.
Is the depth sounder reading deep?
54, 56, 60, 62.
Okay.
It looks like wood.
No, it
It's
could be ice under us, so we better turn out, okay?
What's ice under?
But that's only 1/10 of the iceberg, Ben.
It doesn't look like an iceberg.
Well, we've just come into view of the Reed Glacier. We were going to camp or anchor near that last night, but some friends of ours and about morning fog said there was a lot of wind in there, so we didn't go in. But it just popped into view as we went around the bend. I mean, it looks like a
I'll
glacier.
just give you
River of snow, river of ice coming down to the ocean. Maybe we'll take a closer look at that on the way back. Here's the view as we pass the Reed Glacier and go in towards the entrance to the Johns Hopkins. clouds were higher, we'd see the peaks. Down in there, it's really a very beautiful view. I don't know if the video will pick it out. You can just see a big cruise ship making its way out of the entrance now. That's one of those sort of 1,000 passenger ships. Kind of gives you a scale of what's going on here. Well, I've got to go back and keep an eye out for ice. So we're just turning the corner about 3 or 4 miles from the Johns Hopkins Glacier, and we've come upon the face of the Lompo Glacier. Looks real blue from here. Hope it comes out in the video. I'm not sure what the explanation is why they're blue. We've got a couple of models. Only one that makes sense. Maybe I'll tell the video later. I've got to watch out.
I'm Robin Blake on Lifestyles of the Rich and Alaskan. Here we have a man named Dick Packard. He just caught a fresh ice cube from a glacier.
Would you like
His
to?
lovely sister, Susan, caught it in the net.
Look at that blue birdie.
Look at
Don't tell what we got here, Suzanne.
Sam!
Don't make Suzanne afraid.
Wait.
Air is a typical blue ice cube. All the way from northern Canada. Dad can narrate.
Ben, show them you eating an ice. You eating part of an
Ben,
iceberg.
would you like a little glacier ice for breakfast?
Sure.
How old is that ice cube you're eating, Ben?
About 2,000 years old.
Maybe 10,000 or 100,000.
Dad, would you like to eat some ice cube?
Yeah.
Ah, jeez, Dad.
Hold on to something. Very good ice cube.
This here is gourmet ice. It's aged to perfection.
Don't eat it all, Ben. We won't be able to find any more.
Suzanne, water falls.
This is the process of making the ice cube. First, it's important to take a winch handle.
Yep. Fresh ice out from the Rockies. Yep.
Do you have some words for our folks, Robin?
This is Robin Leach wishing you caviar jeeps and champagne wishes. This is Robin Leach, and I'm wishing you champagne wishes and caviar.
Well, this is it, folks. The end of the line. I'm at the end of the Johns Hopkins Inlet, or as close as I can get without crunching the hull. You can see all the ice all around us. If you listen carefully, you'll hear growling of thunder in the background. That's the icebergs. The glacier's cracking up. Big cruise ship has just come in. We've been the only boat except for him. We're hoping that the wake doesn't bother us. I can't go in as close as he can. You notice he's just plowing right through the ice. But all the icebergs are pretty big. I mean, even these chunks would kind of chop up the boat. And we've turned off our engine. We're just kind of resting here. Looking at the ice, all sculpted and sort of tortured. Those booms are real scary when they're loud. Up in the background you can hear the announcer on the cruise ship. They're probably going to go right in close. Maybe they'll get trapped like Ernest Shackleton, and I'll have to rescue them. Well, this is really, in some sense, the turning point in my trip. It's as far north as I'll be getting, and after this, I'll start heading back, eventually getting to Ketchikan. So that's the culmination, I guess, of 6.5 weeks. Was it worth it? Well, I don't know. I'll have to think about that. I can hear the wake of the ship. Thanks, buddy. Here's a view looking back up the John Muir Inlet. We just came down. There's almost nothing growing here because probably the ice just left the land in the last, well, maybe 25 to 50 years. The end of the Ice Age, beginning of the New Age. One small step for mankind. Wait, no, wrong film. I can see my crew up there. Oop, did you hear that? Cracking glacier. Hey Ben, what do you think of this?
I think it's fun, but those guys are gonna bash right into the wall.
What do you think of this, Suzanne?
Pretty amazing. Very, very dramatic.
I'm the captain. I'm the big man around here. Yep.
It is pretty dramatic. In the guidebook it said, the John Hopkins Inlet, oh, listen. Johns Hopkins Inlet cannot be described. It has to be experienced. I kind of agree with that. I can't. Uh-oh. I hear sounds like the end of the world. This might put in perspective for you the size of the face of the iceberg and the glacier.